Thank you very much for the intro. My name is Chris. I'm the audio development engineer at Cereproc. Thank you very much for choosing to be here and for showing interest in something we've been working hard at for the last year or so. My primary aim here is simply to get you thinking about the challenges and possibilities of artificial singing, and to hopefully think of and ask lots of questions none of us currently working on the subject have even bothered to ask yet. So I should probably start with a brief intro on the company that I work for. We're called Cereproc. We're a Scottish speech technology company based up in Edinburgh. We're a relatively small team, but our research is regularly up against the likes of Google and Amazon and Apple and Microsoft. Our development focuses on thoughtful deployment across as many platforms and devices as possible. It's a really fun environment to work in as an audio nerd. So Cereproc found its place in the world as a kind of traditional text-to-speech company, focused on the provision of characterful, engaging, emotional, and expressive voices that cover a huge number of languages and dialects. I joined the company as a fresh acoustics and music technology graduate at the start of 2017. It wasn't long before I was fully absorbed in vocoders and source and filter decomposition and deep neural net architectures and all that kind of stuff. But the mutually beneficial thing for me was that I was approaching these kind of mature problems and challenges with maybe a less common mindset. It could be argued that most of these advancements in speech tech were motivated with a more kind of engineering mindset, electrical or electronic or even linguistic engineering. But I was kind of looking at things with a more musical, mathematical kind of DSP mindset. And this happens to lend itself very well when we come to talk about singing synthesizers. So I couldn't really keep going until I gave a shout out to Stefan Stenzel. He gave a talk last year. For those of you that attended or have since looked at the ADC YouTube channel, I'm certainly not the first person to bring this topic to hopefully wider attention. Stefan did a great job of traversing several aspects of the topic, including the physics of vocal production and some historical vocoders and some really cool stuff he put together himself. So this kind of just serves as a supplement to his talk. I highly recommend anyone and everyone to check that out. But I couldn't really continue without referencing the first computer ever to sing. So in 1961, the IBM 7094 was this very computer. The vocals were programmed by John Kelly and Carol Lochbaum, and the accompaniment was programmed by Max Matthews. So here's hopefully a little clip of that.
I had a horse of marriage, but you sweet about the sheep of the boy for
So that was the first kind of proper rendition, and the track Daisy Bell has since become kind of notorious, we could say, with this kind of technology. It was referenced briefly in 2001: A Space Odyssey, I think. So there's kind of a meme going on there, and I've since used it as a test track many times. So yeah, in order to talk about the technology behind singing synthesizers, we kind of need to acknowledge the fact that it's always been hanging off the coattails of traditional speech synthesis and TTS. Both use the same systems, really, and the same sets of assumptions. So one such system is called unit selection synthesis, and I'll briefly just blast through what that means. We basically chop up a huge corpus of recorded speech into its smallest fully formed pieces. These could be phonemes. They're usually phonemes, but they could be anything. We then cluster these and build a huge relatable database that can then reconstruct any piece of speech. So we're chopping up and we're picking out the bits that we need in a certain order, essentially, over and over again. So synthetic speech can be generated from a corpus of pre-recorded natural speech by appropriately selecting, modifying, and concatenating these speech units. So an example of unit selection singing synthesis is Vocaloid. It's unit selection. It's probably one of the most popular commercially available singing synthesizers. The idea and the initial research came about from the UPF in Barcelona, and it soon got hoovered up by Yamaha around 2007. And since then, it's got quite a cult following, especially in Japan and Southeast Asia. The voices themselves have taken on a life of their own with detailed profiles and character development. It's packaged not only as a singing synthesis engine with lots of voices available, but it's an integrated environment in which the user can generate singing voice easily and use it for music production mainly. So there's huge singer databases. There's quite a variety of them. There's a lot of Japanese ones, but there's some English ones as well. And these databases basically have to contain every possible combination of phoneme to phoneme. So that's consonant to vowel, vowel to consonant, vowel to vowel, every single one of these combinations, and they have to be recorded at pretty much every single pitch or semitone that the voice could feasibly produce. So these are then recorded, processed, and put into this huge library. I think I have a sample here of a Vocaloid singing. Do I? Maybe?
Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer, do. I'm half crazy, all for the love of you. It won't be a stylish marriage, I can't afford a carriage, but you look sweet on the seat of a bicycle built for you.
So that was, you could probably tell, was built with a Japanese voice. So there's a bit of a mismatch between phonemes really, but it's got its own kind of style and sound to it, and people recognize it, and it's very popular, and sometimes you can hear why. So moving from unit selection, we can think about another type of speech synthesis which has become popular over the last 10 years or so, and that's formerly known as statistical parametric speech synthesis. This system fundamentally requires the use of a vocoder and a set of features or parameters that this vocoder would need as input to produce a speech signal. So there's loads of different types and variants of vocoders, and for some of these vocoders there's loads of different sets of features that you could use. But something I often forget is that this vocoder, this box in the middle of everything, is just one component of a parametric speech or singing synthesis system. We also need the ability, if we want an end-to-end text-to-singing or text-to-speech system, we need to be able to accurately model the features that the vocoder needs to produce the speech from text, intuitively for text-to-speech, and for something else for singing, which we haven't really figured out yet as a group. So the conversion of text to audio signal can be done, for instance, via hidden Markov chains, or HMMs, a kind of statistical Gaussian model type affair, which converts text into these features that the vocoder needs. The modeling framework, it relies on decision trees and clever clustering and stuff that I won't get into in this talk to model these features. But something that's more recently come to light is another type of parametric synthesis, and it basically replaces the HMMs with deep neural networks, a trend that's been going on for the last maybe 5 years or so, seriously, in the world of speech tech. And this direct replacement, at least in the speech synthesis world, was soon very apparent that this really gave an uplift in quality. Performance maybe went down initially, but people soon worked out how to make it real time again. And this was great. This got people very excited. We're using DNNs in a very clever way, and it fits in with the trend that everybody else is doing. So that was nice. But for singing, which is often, again, just sitting at the coattails of speech, the direct replacement of HMMs with DNNs didn't really have the same result. It sounded pretty bad at times. It was quite unstable, very sensitive to perturbations in the kind of databases that we'd use for training. And the architecture that you use, there was things that we weren't considering in terms of voice quality in timbre that became very apparent when we tried to synthesize. So I've got an example of a kind of prototype system that we released with SeraVoice version 5, which is capable of singing if you give it the right input, but it uses one of these, what we call kind of a legacy system now. So apologies for the quality.
It won't be a stylish marriage. I can't afford a carriage, but you look sweet upon the seat of a bicycle made for two.
So there's just various artifacts there we could hear. There's still a lot of work to do. Aspects of breathiness and voice timbre that really could be improved upon. But it's an ongoing struggle. So I'll take a short detour at this point and talk about a project which began around 2 years ago. This is Sophia. She's a social robot developed by a company called Hanson Robotics. Here she is at the UN.
Thank you for inviting me. I am thrilled and honored to be here at the United Nations. The UN is one of humanity's greatest accomplishments, representing a democratic union of nations that are working together for the benefit of all. I am here to help humanity create that future. All right,
I'll pause it there. She's been on a fascinating journey, and we're quite pleased, we're quite proud that she's speaking with a voice that we've built specifically for her. Hanson's CEO, David Hanson, is a man of wild imagination and vision, and after the completion of this first straightforward speech project, it wasn't long before David's imagination went a bit wilder. The Singing Sophia project was triggered after a pondering email from him asking how difficult it would be for Cereproc to get Sophia to sing. So at that stage, we only had a kind of toy proof of concept system for singing up and running. Really not much, but I mean, how hard could it be, really? So we accepted and we got to work. So during the course of this project, we came up against various interesting obstacles. It wasn't long before we found ourselves in completely uncharted territory. So the kinds of questions that came up are the ones I'm hoping to get some of you thinking about today. In particular,
thank you for
a main one, what are the differences between speech and singing? So we had an MSc student recently deal with this question in some detail. I've put some very badly rendered graphs up there to hopefully illustrate a bit of the point I'm making here. So they observed that one of the most significant differences between singing and speech is perhaps the most obvious, is the presence of rhythm, constraining to some extent the otherwise free nature of phoneme or syllable durations. Usually this musical feature encourages singing to behave more pseudo-periodically than ordinary speaking. Most songs are organized with repeated segments from verse to chorus. These repeated segments usually have similar rhythms and prosody. They lead to similar phone length distributions and pitch contours in similar segments. So there's patterns that we can pick up in there. Speech usually does not have this repeated structure in everyday conversation. Another significant difference is the control of breath and dynamics. Singers usually need a strong airstring to generate a relatively louder voice, to hold the note and support continuous pronunciation of long words or sentences to adhere to the rhythm. This usually includes breathing deeply through the mouth. So there's a spectrogram of speech and singing with the breath in between two phrases. So on a very simple level, the power is greater between phrases because the singer is having to take in more breath more quickly. Singers also need precise control of pitch to follow a music score, and the fundamental frequency range in singing usually has more variation. The presence of a singing formant is another difference to highlight. This is usually a high spectrum envelope peak sitting around 3 kHz, which isn't as prominent, at least in speech. Another question was, can these differences be captured, analyzed, and synthesized? And the simple answer is yes, they can. He says somewhat optimistically. Features specific to singing alongside those common with speech exhibit various spectral and temporal characteristics which can be modeled accurately enough to reproduce. That's not an issue, we can do that. It's what's called copy synthesis, and people have been doing that for years. The challenge at hand is more to do with the portability and the robustness of these features when a specific environment is changed or taken away. So the kind of things I'm talking about is, could we get a voice to sing in real time? Could we get it to improvise with another musician? Could we somehow control it, maybe like a puppet of some sort to do what we want? And more importantly, can we extract these features in noisy environments or non-ideal environments? That's where it gets tricky. Yeah. I'm going to skip over question 3 because it's not very interesting. Question 4, how do humans judge the singing quality or skill of an individual? So this is something that came up briefly in the speech synthesis workshop yesterday, is that it's actually really hard to evaluate the quality of a voice. You can rely on mechanical Turk, which is something we do a lot. You can rely on more deterministic kind of scores, like spectral error, spectral distortion, things like that. But it's really tricky in general. So this question was placed in the spotlight for another avenue of research, of which I'll attempt to briefly summarize. So professional quality singing is easily recognizable by most listeners, with notable performers able to exhibit a combination of singing techniques and melodic expression closely associated with their identity. So whilst pitch accuracy is one metric, other aspects of pitch and expression usually employed by professionals can also be considered. We decided to explore this a little bit further, and we targeted regions containing vibrato and portamento and overshoots, things like that. And we tried to link up these elements to the perception of skill in the singing voice. As well as capturing and analyzing, we also attempted to synthesize using that kind of transplant procedure from a non-professional to a professional singer. The results of this were mixed, but one basic outcome of the research is that humans can judge the singing skill of an individual fairly easily, even without knowing the score of the music. And
I'm half crazy, all for the love of you.
one of these is a bad singer, one of these is a good singer.
I'm half crazy, all for the love of you.
And I'll leave you to decide which one that is. The last two questions is something it's really relevant to this conference in general, actually. It's which features would a user want intuitive control over, and what would this interface look like? So they kind of go hand in hand. We want this technology in the control of users who can really put it to the test and have fun with it and create some truly exciting and unique performances. We also want it in the control of those, for whatever reason, don't have a voice of their own and would like to sing as well as speak. We want it used as a part of interactive applications, in games, in music, post-production, on tannoy systems, in your alarm clock, really anything. This all requires development to be done on a front end, whether that be integrated within the likes of Sibelius or as a VST plugin, as a Unity asset or a standalone Android app. It's the fundamental kernel of all this is how a human may intuitively interact and control a voice. We're all grandmasters of our own voice. We've got our control system pretty well honed. But if we take that away and try to replace it with a keyboard, a touchpad, or maybe a set of ruly blocks, or I don't know, we don't know. It's something that's an open question. I was hoping I can chat with you guys about it a bit more. Here's some attempts at interfaces for vocal software. We've got Music XML on the top left. There's Isotope Vocal Synth, which is more a kind of voice transformation tool, but it's pretty cool. That's Vocaloid there, with a kind of traditional keyboard, and then some lyrical information in each note. We've got some systems that try and infer a lot just from lyrics, for example, and then maybe some MIDI. I've got a traditional score there, which I'm used to. It's been used for centuries. And then a PPG Phonem, which kind of does a hybrid format synthesizer approach. There's a lot of attempts at it. And if wrap up the Singing Sophia side of things then, so the conclusion of the project was this, basically.
Sophia, I heard that there's a new thing that you can do now. I heard that you can sing?
Yes, I love to sing karaoke using my new artificial intelligence voice. We should sing something together. Got any songs in mind?
We could do Say Something by, is it Christina Aguilera?
Okay, I just downloaded it. I'm ready to sing.
Okay. Bruce, do you know the song? Now the first ever robot-human duet in the history of The Tonight Show. Bruce.
See something, I'm giving up on you. I'm sorry that I couldn't get to you. Anywhere I would follow you. Say something, I'm giving up on you. Say something, I'm giving up on you. Say something.
Sophia!
there was some mixed feedback about that. Easily summarized by, it was nice, but it was quite unsettling. I think it was sort of the average response. So yeah, I've skipped over a lot of technical details of how that was done. Basically, I don't have time. If you're interested at all, I can talk afterwards. I'm also at the demo in about 10 minutes here. I just wanted to finish off with a little tour around the UK. So just to bring us to the present day then, we're Cereproc, we're just about to release version 6. We're in the midst of doing it at the moment. Parts of it are already available in the Cerevoice Cloud. And some of the voices that we've built in the past, we've sort of re-engineered and we've repurposed to get them to sing as well. So these voices were all originally recorded with speech in mind, so we're using speech databases and speech components, but we're kind of wrestling them and forcing them to sing. So whilst some aspects are good and they're taking advantage of the latest, the kind of same inspired technology that was the center of the workshop yesterday with neural waveform based kind of WaveNet inspired technology. We're kind of taking advantage of that, which I believe we're the only ones to do with singing. And if I'm wrong, please correct me on that. So here we've got a picture of the UK. Sorry, I've left out Shetland for anybody who is from Shetland here. We've got Jack. He's from somewhere in the home counties, I think. And he should be singing right now.
Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer, do.
Then we've got Caitlin over in Dublin.
I'm half crazy, all for the love of you.
We've got, I don't know his real name, wait, we just call him Ned. He's from Glasgow.
It would be a stage knowledge.
Oh, and then we've got Sue from West Bromwich.
I can't afford a carriage.
We've got a Pixie from the West Midlands, or somewhere around there. Sorry, my geography's terrible.
That you look sweet upon the seat.
And then a Demon from London.
Bicycle made for two.
So it's a bit of fun. It is fun to work on, but it's got loads of applications if you let your imagination run a bit wild. So I think that's it for me. And just a very quick word is that it's great to be talking to you about this, but it's also, we're at a stage where, as I mentioned, we've got the back end, we've got the engine up and running, but we're not user interface designers, and only one of us is really an audio developer, and I'm here, so we're quite a small team, and we're looking for collaborators, we're looking for partners to kind of take this to the next level. So that's a link to the UK Smart Innovation Grants, which funding has just opened for the next round. And if anybody's at all interested or wants to talk to me about that a bit more, I would love to chat to you. But otherwise, thank you very much for listening. That's it. Yeah, well, we've got databases. So Cereproc, they've been going for about 10 years now, and over the last 10 years, we've got basically databases of different voices that have since been used to create both commercially available voices in different accents and dialects and languages, and also custom voices as well. So that could be kind of like a voice profile in a sense.
So what's the kind of like politics with those actors and their identities with their voices? Do you have control? Do you guys have control to kind of like make them say anything?
So we get them to sign a very scary looking document, but it basically says that you're recording this for TTS purposes, which means that someone could take your voice and get them to say anything. And 99% of the actors are completely fine with that. There was one person in the depths of Ireland, West Ireland, who read it, understood it, but then at the very last minute, just before recording, decided they changed their mind. We don't like them. That was really annoying.
One very, very quick question. Has to be a quick one. Okay, there's a very quick question here.
Hi, thanks. How is it ready to use in music?
Yes, it is. The input can either be music XML, which is a kind of somewhat score-related format that can be used to produce singing, or it can also be someone's sung audio. So we have a service up and running that basically converts any sung audio that's been isolated into any of our voices singing that same thing. And yeah, we're currently working on a more intuitive kind of input to be able to control the voices.